Good morning. Welcome to Action Channel. Today we have Faulkner, who was contesting for the insurance sector back a few months ago, if we still had an election last September. It's good to have you appearing at our platform and also at D100 later on.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Ed.
I was actually reading about your story for the first time through Apple Daily just a few days ago. And you did a wonderful interview, talk about the reason why you stay in Hong Kong. You have been an actuary, but also very entrepreneurial by setting up some sort of an English school while enjoying nature, living in Lamma Island. Now, you are also contemplating, or actually you will be leaving Hong Kong because of what's going on in Hong Kong, the so-called extreme makeover over the last little while has been more than surreal with the enactment of the national security law. Now, I decided to stay in Hong Kong for as long as I could for various reasons. I was born here. You were born in the UK, but you call Hong Kong home for the last almost a decade or even more, right?
Yeah, last decade, yes.
Yeah, but why decide to leave, or would you ever come back?
I think after the last 2 years, or particularly over the last year, 15 months because of COVID, it's almost impossible or even completely worthless to make long-term plans these days. I think things change so quickly that whatever you decide might be the right thing to do today will not be the right thing to do tomorrow. So currently, my plan is to go to Taiwan and to do a proper Chinese course so that I can prove that I am a real linguist rather than pretending to be one. After 6 months, then we will have to see. So I don't want to think about leaving Hong Kong permanently. Hong Kong is still my home. I still love it. I love it to bits. I still feel a huge sense of responsibility to Hong Kong. So we will have to see. We will have to see whether I am happy in Taiwan, whether I miss Hong Kong, how the situation in Hong Kong develops, what that means for Hong Kong and what that means for me.
When you were contesting or contemplating still back maybe a year ago to contest for the insurance constituency, were you happy to see the way the insurance sector runs in Hong Kong, or was it like in a big mess? That's why you decide to come out and contest, or was it the same person who has that seat for 3 consecutive terms in a row that makes you upset?
It does, yes. Well, let me talk about the sector and talk about the person who represents the sector in LegCo.
Sure.
I think they're 2 different, related but different issues. Firstly, the person who represents the insurance functional constituency seat, Chan Kim Paul. Mr. Chan has been the LegCo representative since 2008, so he's been there for 12 years now.
Yes.
He's only ever had to face an election once, and that was in 2008. In 2012 and 2016, it was a shoo-in. Nobody contested the seat, so he just got reappointed, basically. Yeah. So it wasn't an election, it was an appointment. I suppose, to be fair to him, it was an election in which nobody else stood except him. So it was a shoo-in. And I think that is bad for any kind of democracy or quasi-democracy, or really any kind of nomination process or any selection process. It's not good to have the same person continuing the post just because they are there. You need to have a proper discussion of the issues. You need to talk about what's going on. You need to re-examine the platform that the person was originally elected on in 2008, and so on. So for me, it's suffocating for any kind of representative democracy, however imperfect it may be, to have the same person there uncontested time after time after time. So I thought it was necessary for there to be an election, not for there to be a shoo-in, and somebody needed to challenge him. Also, we needed to have a real serious debate about the issues that affected the insurance sector and also Hong Kong generally. And it is no good to have 2 pro-Beijing stooges fighting it out when they basically agree with 99% of the issues amongst themselves. Now, I recognize that some of my points of view are not particularly attractive or palatable or even popular amongst the insurance sector, particularly the corporate sector, but I nevertheless think that they are issues that should be discussed. And I wanted to have a proper discussion of those issues. So for me, the issue of the seat itself was very important. We needed to have a discussion. We needed to have an election. Whether I won or lost was almost irrelevant. The point was that we needed the debate, and that debate needed to happen. Now, the sector itself, yes, I have major issues with the way that the sector itself is running itself, the way that the insurance authority is or is not doing its job, and how it will develop or it should develop over the next decades. I think there are major deficiencies in the Hong Kong life insurance sector. That's my sector. I know that much better than the general insurance sector. We are dependent on a distribution model that has been outlawed or largely outlawed or completely reworked or made over in most of the rest of the world outside of Asia. It's a system that does not provide insurance or make insurance accessible to 1/2 to 2/3 of the population, particularly the lower income part of the population. It's expensive. There is a huge amount of mis-selling. The digitization of the insurance sector is not proceeding as it should, and it won't change until the insurance sector itself is forced to change, or a major competitor comes in and forces companies to change because they're a substantive competitor.
Are you talking about the hefty fees? Some of the insurance company offers some sort of a savings plan that pays a huge upfront fee for the agents. Is that something that concerns you?
Yes, very much so. The upfront commission model, firstly, has been largely outlawed, as I said before. This is not in whose interest is it to have huge upfront commissions payable to sales agents?
Definitely not the end user.
Not the end user. No, it might be great for good salespeople, but it's not a method that's attractive or a good deal for customers. It leads to very poor sales, very poor quality sales, very poor quality advice. It's only really appropriate for people who are in the high net worth brackets of the top 10 or 20% of people who can actually afford products that are sold that way. The products themselves, it seems to be that insurance in Hong Kong is viewed as being synonymous with savings. Insurance, the roots of insurance have got nothing to do with savings. They are to do with protection, protecting people against the contingencies of life or death. They are still covered in terms of the risks which are covered by insurance companies here, but they seem to have lost the focus. They are no longer the most important part of the products which are sold. There is a very limited market here in terms of pure protection products that people need to cover their needs. So we need to go back to the roots of insurance. We need to have proper segmentation of the market. We need to have products and distribution methods which reach everybody, not just the high net worth. And we need to have proper sales disciplines, and we're not having that here.
Okay. Now, if you were entering into a primary, like last year, some of the people who were trying to go for direct election, you see the end result has been tragic. A lot of the people that you might have come across with either detained or are already serving prison terms. You and Herbert Chow, we were talking about it at FCC, who was contesting for another functional constituency, didn't have a primary. You think yourself lucky, because no one would have expected they put all 47 in jail, and some got bail, most don't.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. It's an abuse of the NSL to say that it's against national security to have a primary. Why is that? These people were trying to win an election. You don't stand for election hoping to lose. You stand for election hoping to win. So you try to maximize your chances of winning an election. That's what the purpose of the primary was. So how on earth that has become illegal under any sensible reading of the NSL is extraordinary. No, there wasn't. I'm not eligible to stand for the geographical constituencies because I'm not a Chinese citizen. I was only eligible to stand for the insurance functional constituency.
Maybe in the second life you could try. Of course, a joke.
I'm not a believer in reincarnation, but hey, if it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have been eligible anyway. If there had been a primary for the insurance seat, then sure, I would have stood for it. Yes.
So if you were, well, you mentioned you will be going to Taiwan soon, but how about for a lower level seat, like a district council? Even for district council, it has to be vetted by the National Security Department, the police, and they will beef up the force from a few hundred to it's estimated they will have like 7,000 or 8,000 NSL police. Doing vetting process is one thing, right? Vetting the candidates. I don't know. Would you consider running for a lower seat, like a district council?
Not now, no. I did consider it before. I live on Lamma Island, as you said.
Yeah.
We have had a similar situation, or we had a similar situation where the incumbent district councillor had been there for many years, and for the previous 2 elections, she had not had anybody standing against her. Now I have some friends on Lamma who we talk politics with quite a lot, and I said to one of them that if nobody was going to stand against the incumbent in the 2019 district council elections, then I would put myself forward and stand. Fortunately, somebody much better qualified than me did stand. She didn't win, but she came very close to winning. I think the problem with district council work is for me, it would be a linguistic problem, because I don't speak Cantonese. I think I would be a very ineffective district councillor. I would be the wrong kind of person for that role. I couldn't communicate on the level that I would need to communicate with most of the people in my district. So I would be the wrong person. So I would not have elected me if I had stood.
Yeah. Tell us something more about your past. You have been well traveled. You are a fellow of the Royal Actuary Society. Is that how it is called?
A fellow of the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. We have a royal charter.
Yeah.
We've had a royal charter since our inception more than 150 years ago. So it's a very well established British professional body. Yes.
Okay. And you work in many different countries before you came to Hong Kong?
Yes, I left the UK when I was 31. I lived in Madrid in Spain for about a year. Then I was headhunted by an actuarial consultancy, and I moved to the USA for a year, and then to Mexico City. I was the first or the second person for one of the largest consultancy firms, actuarial consultancy firms, when they established their office in Mexico in the mid-90s. So I lived in Mexico for about 3 years. Then I was headhunted again, and I moved further south. I moved to Argentina, to Buenos Aires in Argentina, and I lived there for pretty much the same amount of time as I've lived in Hong Kong. And I worked quite a lot of that time in Brazil. So my Spanish is fluent, my Portuguese is decent.
Yeah.
So when I go to Macau, I can communicate with the 200 or 300 people left who speak Portuguese there. But after that, I went back to the UK, and then I came to Hong Kong about 10 years ago. But I'm afraid that my linguistic talent has failed me completely with learning Cantonese, and I'm embarrassed about that.
Well, you can still learn how to recognize traditional Chinese characters while you're in Taiwan.
Yes, I can. Yes, and I can swear, which is always very useful.
Yeah. But tell us more, like Lee, about, like you are having your last few weeks or maybe months in Hong Kong. I don't know when you'll be leaving, but this so-called immigration ordinance amendment change that will be effective on August 1st is scaring a lot of people, because a lot of people, whether you're pro-democracy or pro-establishment, you don't know whether you will be barred from leaving or entering Hong Kong. And then that makes you feel like you are a dissident, like a Wu Kaishi or a Wang Dan who wants to go to China but cannot enter China, or someone who wants to leave, like a Li Wangyang, right, or Lau Xiaobo, but would not be allowed to leave for better medical treatment. That scared a lot of people. Yes. What do you think about it?
I think it's extremely dangerous from a business perspective as well as from a political perspective. The National Security Office itself and the government have repeatedly said that this new law will not be used to stop people leaving Hong Kong, and that the right to free travel out of Hong Kong is guaranteed by basic law. Okay, if that's true, then why is the power to stop people leaving Hong Kong in the law? Why do you put something in the law that you're not going to use? I can understand there being advanced passenger notification systems. Most countries have got that now, and I think Hong Kong is within its rights to require advanced passenger notification to ensure that terrorists are not going to turn up on the door.
Canada,
like Canada, the UK has it now as well.
Yes.
You have to provide your passport details so that you can do the government can do a pre-check on you to make sure you're not an undesirable citizen and stop you boarding the plane in the first place. Okay, I think that's a reasonable thing for Hong Kong to do. I wouldn't have any problem with that if it's used properly. But the power to stop people leaving, if it's not going to be used and it's not what the intention is, and the government is true to its word and the National Security Office is true to its word, then why is it in the law? The government has said it's going to change the law, but why did it put it in the law in the first place? We have to either agree with or listen to what people are saying and take them by their word, or we have to look at what's in the law. And the law is saying that the head of immigration has the power to stop people leaving Hong Kong. So if there is a commercial dispute, for example, from thinking about this from a business perspective, if there is a commercial dispute and one side is a state-owned enterprise or something related to the Hong Kong government or something like that, and then you get into a dispute with them, then they can stop you leaving Hong Kong.
Until it's all settled.
Until it's all settled. And, that could take even 6 months before it even starts the first process of the judicial system here. Yeah. So why, if basic law guarantees our right to leave, if the government is saying the intention of this law is not to stop people leaving, then why is it in the law?
Because NSL is above all laws, as you can see now.
So why is the National Security Office telling us that it's not going to be used to stop people leaving, if that's not true? We're being told one thing and the law says something else. So and the government has said it's going to amend the law. So why didn't it not do the law in the first place if it's going to amend it now? It's very suspicious. It's very worrying. People are right to be concerned about it. Not just people of political bent or people who are activists, but everybody in Hong Kong who has any chance of being involved in any kind of dispute with somebody here could potentially be stopped from leaving.
And some people are checking the airline seats whether it is all full now, because it's only 82 or 83 days before August 1st.
Yes.
If they really take the August 1st seriously, or is it going to be really like July 1st, which you got even less time to leave?
Who knows? Yeah. Who is to stop them doing whatever they want to do at the moment? That's the issue. Supposing somebody was stopped when they were left Hong Kong, then what are you supposed to do? Say, okay, I'll take legal action. How long is that going to take?
Most people, including myself, I'm pro-business like you, that we want the one country, two systems to be intact at least until 2047. Like the Deng Xiaoping 1.0 model that I always write about, talk about, and still believe that this NSL thing is a wrong decision because there's no consultation with Hong Kong people. And if people, the current regime, they don't DQ. They like to use the word DQ, and I use the same term. It's like they're DQing the Deng Xiaoping model now. So a lot of people have lost confidence. So you see this mass exodus of people leaving over the last few months.
Yes, I think, look, we have to go back to the reasons why this law was imposed and the circumstances at the time. I, along with most other people, nobody can tolerate the chaos that we had in Hong Kong from mid-2019 until the end of the year. Nobody can tolerate that. Nobody wants that other than some raw armed criminals who are just out there for a fight. Nobody could live with that kind of daily disruption. Everybody accepts that. The government obviously accepts that. Beijing accepts that. But the vast majority of Hong Kongers did not want that either and wanted that to stop. The way that should have been stopped would be if the government had done something. So if Carrie Lam had actually listened, had found her empathy gene after all these years and done something to listen to people, to find out the root causes about why.
Retraction from the bill, for instance.
Retraction of the extradition bill would have been a very good start.
Like in May or June, even after 3 million people came out.
Exactly. So, I understand perfectly why this chaos could not have continued, why people wanted it to stop. Now, what are the ways of doing that? As I said, if the government had listened, then it would have stopped. They didn't listen. So with all due respect to Beijing and being in Beijing's position, if the Hong Kong government is not going to do something, then they have a responsibility to act. So I have some sympathy with the Beijing government's requiring chaos in Hong Kong to calm down, not because it's a particular threat to them, but because it's a particular threat to social stability in Hong Kong. So they had to act and they had a responsibility. I also have some understanding and justification and acceptance of the need to have national security laws. Every country has them.
Sure.
Every country has something like, in my country, we have MI6, which prevents overseas terrorism and has a security service which investigates terrorists and so on. That is understood. But they are only used in very extreme cases. The Hong Kong national security law that was, as you said, was not debated by anybody, not even considered by our own government, but was nevertheless supported by the government before it was published, and also supported by certain insurance companies and banks before it was even published. People in Hong Kong were not consulted about it. It was imposed on us. It is an extremely broad law that can basically be adapted up and down and adjusted as they see fit to whatever they want to do to silence dissent or to cancel any kind of protest. So really anything that anybody says that is anti-government or criticizes the government could be interpreted as being subversive. That's basically what they're doing with the people who participated in the primary last year. So no, in that sense, it's extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
And the lack of definition in that law is what is freaking most people out. It's very difficult to know when you are or when you are not breaking the law. Okay, we have a judicial system we can largely rely on, but if the wording of the law is so vague that you could intentionally or accidentally trip up or cause problems with the law by what you say or what you write, then how are we supposed to live under that kind of circumstance?
And if the NSD police speed up to like 7,000 or 8,000, for instance, just a number, and then I know for sure that they will beef it up because from various sources, it's not going to stay at like 300 NSL police. And if they are going to just pass it like a multiple choice exam to show their, I don't know, like adequacy in knowing the NSL rules, and things could be easily fabricated, or you can frame someone in potentially breaking the NSL rule and then detain that person for a very prolonged period of time.
Yes, that's what's happening now, isn't it? That these people, the people who were arrested in January for holding a primary in July last year, are still in jail and will go. The court hearing is, I think, at the end of May. So that means they would have served 5 months in jail just on because somebody decided that they might have broken the law before it's even been contested.
Yeah.
So that kind of lengthy pre-trial, pre-sentencing period is enough to stop people even uttering a word. So it's encouraging large-scale, industrial-scale self-censorship, I would say. You talk about the number of people in the NSL. It's incredible, isn't it, that the two massive hotels in one in Saigon and one in Causeway Bay have been requisitioned for the NSL staff. And yet the tens, hundreds of thousands of people who live in cages or in fire traps are similarly not been rehoused in lots of empty hotels in Hong Kong. It's amazing what can get done in this city if the pressure comes from the right people. And we now have a 128,000 square foot building as permanent office for the NSL with a nice harborside view, I believe. That's all planned, done, going to be built probably in the next year or two. It's amazing how quickly that can happen when we have a 5-year backlog in dealing with public housing.
It must be painful for you to see all these so-called drastic changes and this extreme makeover. Now you're a professional and you have been entrepreneurial in some different interests that you recently closed because you are moving to a new place. I should be very careful about using that word.
Yes, don't call it a country because they'll block you. To a new place, a new renegade province. Yeah.
What would you miss most about Hong Kong since your time is kind of up?
I think I'm already missing it because it's gone already. Even though I'm physically in the same city, what used to be great about this city is no longer there. The fizz of this city is gone. Okay, you used to arrive in Hong Kong and there was a fizz, there was a buzz, there was a sense of freedom of protest, freedom of speech, freedom of arts. We now have an absurd situation where a rank Philistine like Eunice Young is now determining what we can see in a museum. How do we end up in that dreadful situation where people like that are determining what we can and cannot see in museums? The fizz has gone. How long are we going to be prohibited from protesting? On what basis are we being protested?
I don't think we will have a candlelight vigil on June 4th.
I don't think we will either. I don't think we're ever going to be able to protest about anything ever again. The government will come up with, they're manipulating the COVID requirements. It's utterly absurd that you can have 12 people around the dining table inside a restaurant, but you can only have 4 people outside. standing outside. That is utterly absurd. It is an abuse of science, and the risk of COVID infection outside is infinitely smaller than the risk of COVID infection inside, and yet 12 people can sit together inside, but only 4 people can gather outside. That is an utter nonsense. It is an abuse on the control of protests here. It is abuse of COVID, the situation with COVID to stymie protesting. So they'll either use COVID, or the police will now say that there is a risk of somebody shouting a slogan that's against the national security law, and therefore the protest must be banned. So they will find any way and abuse any kind of science or anything they need to do to stop people protesting.
I talked to some of my hedge fund prop trading friends. They think that would really touch their red line if they block information. YouTube, whatever, because technically they could do it using different algorithms to detect certain programs, block the signal of sorts. So that could kiss free information goodbye.
Yes, well, they've already done that with one of the websites that was supposedly doxing police officers.
Yes.
I think it's good that the tech companies have said they will refuse to deal with the Hong Kong government. There was something in the press the other day about the number of cases that the Hong Kong government had asked for assistance from Google, from Facebook, and from Twitter, and so on, for help with previous crimes. It was in the thousands of cases beforehand, but now that these tech companies have refused to assist the Hong Kong government. Okay, so what's the Hong Kong government going to do? The only way they can do and have a proper standoff with them is to shut them down. So I think ultimately, unless the tech companies agree to kowtow to the government is going to have to shut them down. So I think at some point these access to these internationally used social media services and information services are going to be restrained and restricted. Yeah,
and I don't know whether there could be a technology to block VPNs if the last survival mode could be using VPNs, and if that could change too, then that's the death of Hong Kong.
Yeah, I am unclear about the legality of VPNs in China, of all places. It seems like the vast majority of people use VPNs, but I think technically they're illegal. I don't know if that's right. It seems to be that they ban VPNs when a particularly sensitive moment. So at the time of Tiananmen, they'll ban VPNs and close down all access, so China will be completely sealed off.
Yeah.
That could happen here. That could happen here. It's one of the things that the government, I think, really needs to understand when it's talking about, the youth should take advantage of the opportunities of the Greater Bay Area, which, by the way, is not a bay; it's a river delta. So the name is stolen from San Francisco. Let's continue to use GBA. They say that young people need to take advantage of the opportunities in GBA, but do they realize that young people use Facebook, they use Twitter, they use YouTube, and that when they go to the GBA, if they work there, they're not going to have access to these services. So, and they're surprised that nobody's particularly interested in moving. I think it's like 6 or 7% of young people, when they were surveyed, said they'd be willing to move to the GBA. So are they surprised? What do they think people do in their spare time? What do they think young people do in their spare time? How are they going to be able to communicate with their friends if they're completely cut off by
watching CCTV?
Watching CCTV, or becoming Xinhua aficionados? It's just not going to happen.
Well, it's sad to see in less than 10.5 months, Hong Kong has this extreme makeover, and then some people that you and I know, they are at the detention center. Some of the professionals, they might lose their licenses. There's one barrister, and then I think every year you have to be reapproved by the Health Council if you are a medical doctor. There's one doctor who is in detainment, Dr. Kwok Ka-Kay, formerly with the Civic Party. And then this whole trial thing hasn't quite started yet, except the first case will be tried without a jury. What do you think about that? If you try some cases without a jury, we have a jury system in Hong Kong for a long time.
Well, it means there's no free trial, doesn't it? There's no fair trial. If you're going to appoint the judges that sit for national security cases, and they are appointed by the government, then the government is not going to appoint ones that they don't think are going to be favorable to their point of view. So they have a choice of judge. They're going to choose the judges that they know they have the maximum chances of getting conviction, and these people will decide on whether these people are guilty or not. So how is that fair? When we're talking about the judicial independence is great in Hong Kong, or we have a great judiciary and so on. Yes, we do for commercial contract litigation, then we probably do. But when it comes to something that the government doesn't like, then all they have to do is invoke whichever article it is of the NSL and say, okay, that's far too complicated for Hong Kong courts to deal with. Let's just siphon them off to China. There's a big black hole in the middle of Hong Kong where somebody can be sucked out without any judicial oversight whatsoever.
So that could be a case that Jimmy Lai, Benny Tai, or Joshua Wong could be a martyr if the way things are, and if this is what Beijing wants to see, and that would produce another Lau Xiaobo, someone who would die a martyr.
Well, they've already said that about Jimmy Lai, haven't they? That they said that he's an enemy of the state, that if they don't get the conviction that they want in Hong Kong, then they'll siphon him off to China. They've already said that, but then they added the words in accordance with the law. That some, according to Teresa Cheng, that made it all nice and acceptable. Look, if they want to get Jimmy Lai and Joshua Wong and Benny Tai, then they'll get them. Even if they stand trial here and they were very unlikely, but if they were to win their cases, then Beijing will get them some way.
But Lee, I still think 99.99% of the Hong Kong people would accept the Deng Xiaoping 1.0 model. I mean, the one that he talked about, that he promised, but now I find it very unbelievable to DQ Deng Xiaoping altogether.
Look, I think if you want to have a feeling about what one country, two systems was supposed to mean, or what it meant at the time that it was instigated by Deng Xiaoping and Margaret Thatcher, then read the joint declaration. I've read it several times, and it is a beautifully clear document about what its intentions were and are. If you read it, you can be under no misunderstanding about what the intention was. The intention was for Hong Kong to be autonomous apart from foreign affairs and defense. Okay, Beijing insists that Hong Kong is part of China, and that right is only because of some constitutional clause allowing special economic or special administrative regions. Okay, so what's the point of reiterating that? We know that. The joint declaration doesn't exist because the Chinese constitution allows SARs. It exists because there was a joint declaration between the United Kingdom and China. So read the joint declaration again. You will see what the intentions were and are. They're very clear. And then look at the situation that's happening in Hong Kong now, and you tell me whether you think we're being loyal to that.
Well, I hope the Hong Kong government would still listen to the voices of Hong Kong people. But I find right now Carrie Lam is having deaf ears and just won't listen to anyone.
She's pathologically incapable of listening to anybody. She is the most stultifyingly arrogant person I have ever come across in my life. If you write to her, you will almost certainly get a letter or a reply from her press office that says we have no comment. Even about things which are very easy to answer and are not particularly controversial, they still won't comment. They won't give you a reply. One of the questions I asked Carrie Lam was, she promised to rebuild trust with Hong Kong people. And in her last CE's address, she said that the process of rebuilding trust had to happen. So I asked her how she was going to do that. Okay, what are you going to do to rebuild trust? She said she didn't have any comment. So I said, well, why are you making in your speech that you're going to rebuild trust if you don't have any comment? Do you not have any idea of what you're going to do to rebuild trust? No comment. So I said, okay, in 2019, you said you were going to open up a forum where you'd speak to people, ordinary Hong Kongers, on a one-to-one basis to find out what's going on in their lives. She did that once, and then she stopped it, ostensibly because people were being doxxed. Well, that's very easy to prevent. You just make it completely anonymous, make people wear masks. If you want, remove their phones and so on. I asked her, okay, so you've done one. When are you going to do the next one? She didn't reply. So I said, does that mean you're not going to do it? She didn't reply. So she has a responsibility to Hong Kong. She has two responsibilities, one to Beijing and one to Hong Kong. If she's not going to exercise the second set of responsibilities, and that is to the people who pay her salary, then in my humble opinion, she is in breach of her requirements under basic law.
Well, you know, she is having a TV program 4 times a day at RTHK. I don't know how long her program will last, and Bacon, you can shoot her an email and say, I have some questions. Can you answer it at RTHK?
I've already done that.
And no response.
I asked her what were the ratings of her program. of a set of programs. I said I wanted the ratings information by episode, and she hasn't replied.
I don't think a lot of people are watching it now.
I'm pretty sure more people are watching this than are watching her. I'm pretty sure more people read my LinkedIn posts and watch her. The whole thing is utterly absurd. Firstly, it's been done in Chinese only. So what about the rest of us? Okay, I don't speak Chinese. Is it only Chinese speakers who are interested in how the election committee is going to work? And what about ordinary Hong Kongers? She says she's having kind of a nice fireside chat with people who are agreeing with her. What is the point of sitting there and filming yourself talking to somebody that agrees with you? Right. You need to speak to people who challenge you, not people who agree with you. That's why we're in the utter mess that we're in now, because she does not listen or does not show any intention of listening to people who do not agree with her.
Well, you have a liberal Western mindset that she wants patriots to be her listeners or viewers of the show.
It is not patriotism to close your mind to listening to other people, is it? It's patriotism. True patriots really care about the city more than they care about themselves. True patriots listen to viewpoints from all sectors of society. That's what a true patriot does. A true patriot does not close their mind, close their ears, and refuse to discuss with other people.
Yeah. Well, Lee, I hope I can invite you to our show while you're in Taiwan. You are Hong Kong. You are a permanent resident of Hong Kong. I decided to stay in Hong Kong as long as I could, but we will connect through the social media and through D100. Thank you so
very
much.
So thank you for inviting me again. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you. Bye-bye.